On a chilly November morning, I did a hike on the E&N Railway as it goes along the north side of Cameron Lake. It was an out and back hike. On my outbound leg, I only took a few cell phone photos of the trestles and just focused on walking. I used the wide-angle lens on my cell phone, so this distorts the foreground, making it look slanted. At the Big Trestle, besides the ties being crumbly, the trestle deck was also very slippery because of the frosty morning. It was a struggle for me to carefully cross this trestle. Well, the sun is just about to appear over the mountain as I look back eastward at mile 14.6. Oh, my lesson for today is this is the season to start bringing my Yak Trax spikes for my boots to give me some more traction, because it was tough crossing this trestle. The ties were really slippery with the morning frost ice, and yeah, I was careful, but it was my slowest crossing ever. Here's the location big picture: Vancouver Island on the west coast of British Columbia, and the red dot is the area of my hike. Here's the railway map. The yellow squares are mileposts. Here's where I hiked, the north shore of Cameron Lake. And here's the close-in view with the railway on the north side of the lake and Highway 4 on the south side. My start and end point is about mile 12.35, right where people park to go up to Wesley Ridge alongside Highway 4. My turnaround point is the far west end of the lake, about mile 16.7. So here's the extent of my hike, shown in red, just shy of 14 kilometers return. And my walk and vlog style of video is going to start here at the turnaround point, mile 16.7, as I walk back to where I started from. These mossy rocks with a peekaboo view down the lake always make a good place for me to stop and take a break. Okay, time to start my hike back. This is the far west end of Cameron Lake, and I'm going to the east end. I like this turnaround place. Rocks to sit on. The railway grade is nicely clear of obstructions and overgrowth here. That's because I'm at the eastern end of a fiber optic cable project that happened a couple of years ago, and it really cleaned up the grade. But on today's hike, I only enjoy that clean area for maybe about 50 meters by my turnaround. Here's a little clearing they made during the work for the fiber optic cable project. It's a nice sunny day over the lake. This northwest corner of the lake is a hard place for me to get to. No matter which end I start at, where I started today's hike at the east end of the lake, or if I start at the Port Alberni summit slope, it takes me a long time to get to this spot. So this is the toughest place for me to get to. But it's easier to get to from the Alberni summit side, and I was recently here about 4 weeks ago. So I'll get to this area a few times a year, usually from the other end. So here's where the trail comes up from Cameron Lake cabin area. Lots of people come up this trail, then use the railway for a short stretch, and then continue on up to Mount Wesley. So this is the direction that they would go. Autumn leaves are all on the ground. Nice pretty carpet for walking. Here's one of those areas that's had continuous rock fall, likely ever since 1911 when this line was built. And the evidence of cleared rock is on the right with all these moss-covered rocks built up. It's just the way it goes. This back corner of Cameron Lake apparently has always been a problem for maintenance, clearing slides, windfalls. And tricky for the trains because it's so curvy. So lots of derailments for lots of reasons. Just beyond this tree is where the trail goes up for people to continue their hike up to Mount Wesley, Wesley Ridge, those kinds of cool places. Right up there, steep. This is about mile 16.4 or so. This is one of those places where I've just walked to, then thought, hey, this will be good to video. So I back up and walk through it again. Yes, this is staged. I just like this rock face right here. It's so pretty. I'll show you where I came from. Just a continuous curve on this railway subdivision. So many curves around these rocky outcroppings and twists and turns as the railway route hugs the mountainside. Tough place for long trains, tough place for any trains, but they made it work for 90 years. And here's a place where the rail broke, and sometime in the last year, I'll show you the reason, but it got pushed in after it broke by this log. So what would have happened, I'll show you as we look up the slope, this would have been a windfall from way up there, and it would have eventually came down here, just cruising down the steep slope and smash into the rail, breaking the rail. Yeah. And now we break out from some Broom into an easier to walk section. And that's going to be the theme for the next little while. Brief respites from the Broom. So yeah, this is the game here. We continue to dodge branches for the encroaching trees. The rail bed is mainly moss over some dirt with a bit of the ties visible. And here I come to about mile 16.1. Yes, I'm going eastward towards Parksville, so the mileage counts down. 16.1 for me is the location of what I call the low light Mike tree, which is the big tree windfall that was cleared up here on the right. Meaningful to me because the first time I ever came by here, this was my first ever turnaround point. Didn't quite know where I was in terms of mileage. But then, more importantly, when some good people cleared this, they wrote a message on the tree. It's fading now, but it says, "Hello, low light." I sure appreciate that. I always smile when I see it and stop and take a break here. One time I even enjoyed a beer here. Yeah, hello, low light. Thanks, guys. The people that clear these obstacles are likely the people that use this for recreational purposes on various things like ATVs. I sure appreciate them because they keep it clear of obstacles. And here comes milepost 16. A post is up there, but the sign is missing. And this is often a turnaround point for me as well on some of my hikes, and in fact it was my turnaround last time I was here about 4 weeks ago. I came in from the other end, from the Alberni summit end, and turned around here. I took a break sitting on that rock. But yeah, this is a favorite place of mine. I love railway mile posts because there's the post there. I'm really map and chart orientated. That's how my brain works. That's how I remember a lot of this. So now let's go beyond mile 16, counting down into the 15s. And this is an area that I hadn't been to for about 10 months, since January 2023 on a very wet, rainy day. And now I'm back. Of course, I was here an hour ago, but hey, it's today. My first time back. I gotta watch, I'm still slipping on things. Short strides, Mike. Here's an idea of what the broom is still like. It's problematic. I'm gonna raise this up as we go by. Carefully walk across. All sorts of hidden tripping hazards. Yeah, looking back west. Let's continue east about mile 15.9. Okay, here about mile 15.8 or so was a maintenance area where they set equipment on and off, because here's a wood area where there's wood between the rails, and it's barely existing now, is disintegrating. So I'm walking on this wood area, and then on the right hand side is old maintenance items. Really, it's leftover things from when this was a working area. I'll take you in there. Right here, hard to see in the weeds, is a wooden box that held grease cans. Through here are the big grease cans. They're just here in 2 rows. And I like the Mr. Trevelclef is the prolific artist around this area. I appreciate Mr. or Mrs. Trevelclef's work. All our labor is gone to rust. You can't really see the Trevelclef with leaves, but it's there. Then continuing through here, there's more stockpiles of leftover items. So yeah, there's the mound of metalwork. There's the barrel full of more metalwork. There's the pile of joiner plates. And then further up on the right, we've got some rail. As is often the case, about every mile or so, there's a few lengths of rail kept for when they need it. So yeah, this railway, built in 1911 under Canadian Pacific ownership, and late 2001 is when they did the final trains, and then early 2002, like just a couple days into 2002, was when they brought the mill switcher out. That's the last main movement on this line over 20 years ago. And that's it. Still owned and held as a railway. And right now, difficult for me to walk through with all this broom and overgrowth. Okay, here's an area of narrow encroachment. Doesn't last too long, but got trees on both sides and trees in the middle. At least it's not broom, but here comes that. And now broom from both sides and broom in the middle. I'm coming up to an area about mile 15.6, and it's an area that's had continual dirt and little small rock gravel slide, probably whenever there's a heavy rain, and so it's just built up, and it actually covers the rail line for 5 to 10 meters or so. Rails are still there, just buried underneath. That gives you an idea. It just comes down through there and then down from there, just more and more of the dirt. A little rock road every time there's a big rainstorm, and it comes down here. There's a better view of the area. It's just a chute coming right down, and I'm a few feet above the railway grade on top of this here. It's like a mini version of a Frank slide. And where are the rails? They should be on either side, but they're not here yet. There's one on the left I can see, and I can finally see the one on the right. Yeah. That's how it looks. 5 to 10 meters. Buried by dirt and rock, and will continue to be buried some more. Okay, back into some lovely autumn leaves on the ground, paired with a lovely green color of moss and the evergreens. This is nice. Another reason why I keep coming back here, in spite of how difficult it can be walking, it's just the beauty of it. And there's something about getting back to these hard to reach places. Like the little tree right there. Working hard growing up. Yeah, more broom. It gets tiresome walking through it, pushing against it. Thankfully, the droughts in the last couple summers was unkind to some of the broom, leaving it a bit withered. I was happy with that, but other places the broom continues to flourish. But coming up in just a moment, we break out of the broom temporarily again for a bit onto a carpet of leaves. It's one big mind game for me, discouraged by the broom and then encouraged by the beauty of the autumn leaves. Here about mile 15.5 as we're counting down. We're working our way to mile 12.3 if you're keeping track. It's another spot of beauty for me, just the trees, the leaves. It's nice. Easy walking again. Looking up the slope. Nice. Here's another box that was used for grease boxes. I like the remnants of the maintenance items, reminding me of the era when it was trains running here and maintenance being done. These are very much history walks for me, thinking back to the history. The whole thing of past, present, and then wondering about the future. As I walk through this beautiful place, even the broom. Okay, let's work our way around this rock. And we're going to hit some sun in a moment. Breaks through. Let me show you. Yeah, looking up the rock here. And back up between the rails. I need to say that because they're hard to see. Told you this is a big rock. Takes a while to go around it. Yeah, there's another view. Okay, this is about to start the tangent, long straight stretch, about mile 15.1. So this is when I start to look for the milepost. It's the milepost 15 is the only intact milepost that I'm seeing today. That's just the reality of being over 20 years out from this being a maintained railway. Okay, and here comes the post and sign on the right hand side, camouflaged by the trees. And now as I head into the mile 14s, well, I'm going to find some big rocks that came down onto the track a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. They let loose from way up above, and they're big ones. All right, take some broom, take some encroaching trees from either side, add a relatively big windfall rock, but not as big as what we're going to see coming up. And let's add a couple windfall trees that are cumbersome to get by. Now, if you like big rocks, this is the place. Surprisingly to me, there's not a whole lot of dirt that came down to the track level, if at all. The dirt probably stopped, and the rocks just had so much momentum that they just kept on going until thump, they landed here. This one always reminds me of a biscuit, like a baking powder biscuit or a muffin. The spike. But it continues with the lovely spray paint. BFR, Big Effin' Rock. And here we go, right in the middle. And that one there, I wonder if it's broke the rail underneath. Yeah. Yeah, let's just continue on down, working our way down towards the mile 14.6 trestle. That's the big one. See if it's as slippery going back as it was coming over. Here's the last bit of Broom Jungle before I get, oh yeah, jungle is right. Okay, let's go above this. Before I get to the Big Trestle. Okay, here we come. Mile 14.6 trestle, my favorite one on today's hike, because it's just such a great view of Cameron Lake below it. Hopefully it's easier to walk. Yeah, nice view, but I'm going to take a break down here at the end. It's a good spot for a break on these bridge timbers. Good little table and a bit of a chair for me. Yeah, nice tall trestle. Okay, break time over, and now it's time to move. It's just before noon. Let's cross this trestle, do a few photographs. Here, I'll illustrate what was happening this morning as I would put my foot down and it would slide to the left because it was so slippery. And so I couldn't get a grip, and so I'd slide. And so that was dangerous for me. I've also discovered that the stringer beams, which are the thick beams that run parallel to the rails and the ties are lying on top of it, those stringer beams, which I often describe as thick and strong and mighty, solid, perfectly safe, they're actually getting a little bit rotted and disintegrated on top in a few places. So they're not as completely solid as I thought they are. Tells me that even that solid part has a finite life. So yeah, everything is wearing out. Here's an example of the tie being really poor, which is why I'm on the standing above the beam. Okay, this arbutus is blocking me, but it's also a good time to head over to the other side. Okay, here's where I step onto the beam. Yeah. This is still one of my favorite places that I come to hike. I describe it as one of my happy places. I realize that's ironic, considering it's a sketchy, tall, unmaintained trestle. There's my feet. It's ironic, but everyone has their areas of comfort that are not everyone else's areas of comfort. Yeah, nice view. Okay, until next time. I like this spot because in spite of the thick broom, there's a nice view to the lake. Looking on down Cameron Lake eastward to the east end of the lake. This is about mile 14.5 as we count down the miles. Coming up here, mile 14.5, 14.4 area was the site of a derailment. This happened on October 31st, 1986, on a train of log cars that were being hauled to Port Alberni. The logs were being hauled to Port Alberni on a temporary basis because of an IWA strike at that time. This information is per a Facebook post by Maynard Atkinson. He and one of his friends visited this site on the next day to do some photographs of the scene. And these rock bluffs up here and further on ahead are where Maynard likely would have climbed up to get his views. Here about mile 14.2 or so, it's a nice rock face that just keeps going up. Back down here to the land of the Broom. I'm coming up to the mile 14 trestle. And its notoriety on this hike is that it's in good shape. It's a straight, simple, easy to walk trestle, and the decking is pretty good. It's not rotted. So its notoriety to me is its boring simplicity. There's also some lovely area right here where the water is dripping down the rock into the sun there. The lake is through there. I've never seen the mile post here. I've seen photos of it, but one of those ones that just has gone missing. Looking back, yeah, simple to walk. There are a few areas of rock fall here around mile 13.9. Nice and simple. Just came from up there. Little pieces here. Easy to get around. Here's another bit of rock fall. This is just right at mile 13.8, just before the little trestle. Here come the twin trestles. So, two of them separated by a small bit of land. These are in poor shape up top, so the kind where I walk above the stringer beam. And there's a nice view of the lake. Partial view, peekaboo. Oh yeah, not slippery at all. Bit of land built up and held in by a retaining wall. Yeah. It's Cameron Lake. Looking back at what we just crossed at mile 13.8. And now mile 13.7 trestle. This one's longer. You see the curve, and there's lots of ties missing. Okay, let me find my stringer beam to walk above and on. Oh yeah, here's a long section where I'm just walking on the stringer beam. Yeah, it's my boots on either side of the main rail on the stringer beam. I love this scene. So beautiful to capture. Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Let's get off this sketchy trestle. Yeah, that was fun. Okay, mile 13.7, and we keep counting down. A nice smooth walking area, some broom, but not in my way. Here's another maintenance area where leftover and unused supplies were dumped. There were some rails before. There's a bunch of metal work, and here's a collection of old metal cans that I think held grease. Around mile 13.2, here's a really long tangent section. Took me a long time to figure out in railway terminology that just means straight. I just like how it seems to go on forever and ever. That's how it feels when you're tired. Here's another area of maintenance items. There's a bunch of metal work in there, a pile of plates, tie plates it looks to be. And here's a nice little retaining wall to stop the rock fall. A retaining wall made of rocks held in chicken wire. Very smart. We're getting to where the Cameron Lake siding west end was. That switch was removed in the last few years of railway operations because there was a derailment around here. The switch items are there, the rails, right through there. Here's a view of the siding, right in there. Just continues on in these trees. I feel like I'm doing a landmark tour. And next is the site of the Cameron Lake Water Tower, and all that's left is a concrete foundation, and resting on it now, instead of a water tower, are some lengths of spare rail. But yeah, concrete is covered with moss, and the rails are resting on it right there. So, imagine the water tower. Cameron Lake Water Tower. You can't see it, but the Cameron Lake siding is right there under a bunch of overgrowth. And there's a spot where it's visible again through the trees. Well, sort of visible. Well, here's some more of the siding, and we can actually walk in. Yeah. Find those rails. Okay, back to the main line. We are just about to break out into the field right by the Cameron Lake Station name sign. So this is where years ago the chalet and station would have been. Up ahead on the left are some privately owned maintenance cars. That's all I know about them. There you go. Station name sign. Here's the level crossing used by the modern day chalet, which is a group of cabins, privately owned. And we're coming up to the east end of Cameron Lake siding, where the switch is still there, along with some signage, the derail. Here's the frog. Switch stand is hard to see with the trees, but when I come in here before dawn, as I often start my hikes, these things sure reflect well, reflecting the light of my headlamp. Yeah. Okay. Just a short ways to go now. The sound of the little Qualicum River is nice. Coming up to the bridge for that. So we're about mile 12.5 or so. Okay, so this windfall tree marks the spot for the Wesley Ridge Trail to head up there. Nice. Okay, that's the end of the walk. Thanks very much for watching this. I really appreciate you.